Here we go, starting off with Bitcoin as always, and I do believe that there is a relevant reason to be aware of a potential fake out going on right now. Now, yesterday I was looking at the 29,900 region as a big pivot on this market. I think that there is good reason to believe that I can be massively wrong on that. It'd be quite embarrassing, obviously, but I do want to be aware of this fact as of right now. So with that in mind, let me recap the last 24 hours. We were looking at that region as a short-term indication that Bitcoin was going to come back up and test the medium-term time frame range highs. That's basically this region right here at about 31,500 or so, in line with our last few wick highs and closing highs from basically middle of May in this case. Playing out the LARP lines right here, actually. But ultimately, as of right now, we are still looking at lower highs for the time being. And because we are looking at lower highs, it's time to combine that with a few other signals that if they play out, this would confirm a major fake out, in my opinion, and very likely imply targets back down well below $30,000, probably closer to $27,500 to $28,000 with a bounce in there, and maybe even closing lower lows for the time being as well. Wouldn't necessarily imply a full-on move down to our current low, but if this does happen, there will be a threat of that, and we'll probably come back tomorrow on Saturday and see and kind of assess the damage. But for right now, as long as these conditions that I'm about to speak about are not present, they're not ticked off, then I actually do still stick with what I said yesterday. And Bitcoin likely to trade back up towards the medium-term time frame range highs and probably pull back from there over the weekend. And in this case, what is essentially the setup? Well, a few things. So first and foremost, and actually a big one for me, is the funny rates over here. I tweeted this out on the Krown trading application Twitter account earlier, and actually been doing that rather frequently recently. Or actually, Elsa does it, to be fair. So should give her some credit on that one. And if you are interested in like some of the underlying market dynamics, it would be a good account to follow, as we try to do this, nice and easily when it is relevant. And in this case right here, we see that funny rates have actually flipped back up to positive, significantly positive compared to especially the last week of recorded data at 0.011%. Again, this is like not a super high level, naturally speaking, but within the context of our current trend, which is a downtrend, high funding rates or positive funding rates in general have been, good local high areas. Just like in a general uptrend, negative funding rates have been good local low areas. But now, seen as we've reversed, this is a concerning factor right over here. That combined with our momentum oscillators, of which the 4-hour is setting up for another drive of hidden bearish divergence. So we'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, and I believe it's consistent up to a 6-hour as well. Yeah, it certainly will have a potential put in the 6-hour, and I think maybe even the 12-hour or the daily. One of these guys is printing it right here, maybe on spot price action. Let me just double check. No, and also no, actually. But fair enough. These timeframes do still hold some weight. If that does get confirmed as a local high, which will happen with especially a 4-hour closure below about 29,600 in this case, I would say is fair game. Even just below $30,000 is bad enough, 29.9 is bad enough. But ultimately, that would confirm this as a local high and thus a lower high, and well, hidden bearish divergence plus momentum oscillators all the way up to, I believe, a 12-hour start to turn down below there. Sorry, no, I'm wrong on a 12-hour. 6-hour, however, should do it. No, about $29,000 right there, actually. So again, wrong on that one. 4-hour will turn down below about $29,000 as well. Again, do understand that when the time frame closes, this number will naturally go up, and 3-hour is probably going to be flippy floppy if I had to guess. It's going to turn down below about 30,100, and hourly is going to continue down below about 30,600 or so. So ultimately, I'm getting conflicting signals right here. Again, I want to reiterate my stance here, very hopefully as abundantly clear as possible, that as long as that condition is met for confirming a local high right here, I am not looking at this as a fake out. If this does get confirmed as a fake out, then yes, very likely back down somewhere between about $27,500 to $28,000. Probably a bounce there, but I do think that bounce would probably fail, and we'd likely see new closing lower lows, not necessarily lower than the last major wick low, but likely new closing lower lows. Anyways, that is also going to be consistent with the daily right here. The daily is what is most concerning to me, potentially speaking, and that is because daily stochastic momentum will turn down with any sort of a daily closure below 29,350. If you're on the higher term timeframes and you just want a nice and clean and clear sound bit, the daily, any sort of a daily closure today, end of day, below that level, 29,350. And yes, I would be looking for, very likely a move somewhere south of $28,000, maybe even as low as 26 or so. Until that happens though, I do still look at this as more likely to test the medium term timeframe range highs somewhere around 31.5 or so. and probably sets up for a greater move to the upside. Again, as long as that condition is not met, all kind of hinges on the short-term timeframes below about 29.6, I would say, or on the daily below 29.350. The daily one being particularly nasty in this case. Other than that, I do want to, yes, we spoke about targets. I do want to speak about a little bit more on the hopium side. So the reason why I'm not blindly saying that this is definitely going to be a fake out, definitely going to be a trap, is due to Dixie over here, which we covered yesterday briefly. Dixie is playing out the downside move that we were looking for. Didn't necessarily get like a full-on major move to the upside, but we weren't necessarily looking for a full-on major move to the upside. You know, the next move was very likely to the downside, which we've gotten. So in this case, I am looking for this one to correct a little bit more, probably into end of this month, and that's going to play into the other chart that, you know, still does suggest that Bitcoin's more likely, a lot more likely, to bounce out of this range into like the shallow $30,000 territory, which we've kind of, you know, gotten a little bit of already, into early June. Doesn't mean that we can't come back down and swipe lows one more time, but it would still suggest that, you know, we probably hold those lows on a wick basis at least. In this case right here, I am looking for this to correct down probably into early June, somewhere around 102 or so. We're already down to about 102.65, which was yesterday's major targeted region for the short term, or actually a little bit lower than that, about 102.40. So I would be looking for a shallow amount of continuation right here, probably one more bounce attempt, and then likely comes down next week, probably next week. So in this case, that plays into the 5-day chart over here, of which this is essentially judging my bias that Bitcoin's more likely to bounce out of this region to the upside before potentially rolling over later. Now in this case, short term, you know, again, that doesn't mean that Bitcoin can't come back down and maybe even test around our current wick lows. I just don't want to see any closing lower lows than the wick low. A closing lower low than the last closed low, which was, I think, around 28,000 bucks. I think that is possible, however. So I would kind of keep open the door for that. I'm not too confident on this right now, to be quite frank with you. And I think it's important to be very, you know, forthright with something like that. But basically, this chart over here, this was essentially the chart that gave us the buys for a major move to the downside from about 48,000 bucks. That one's already played out, obviously. And then what I've been doing recently is looking at the mean reversion of those typical moves after these targets have played out. So this one, again, it's already played out. I won't go through the explanation on this again here because, you know, we've done it too many damn times. But what I'm looking at right now is the mean reversion play after you play at that downside move. So in this case over here, you can see that after Bitcoin plays out the major downside move, the next upside move, about 29% done over the course of 10, 15 days, right? I've done all the calculations for all these past 4 ones, not including our current 5th one, obviously, because it hasn't happened just yet. And I've recorded the data over here, of which we can look at the mean reversion play from all of the past iterations and the average of that, which was about 31.1%. That would again put Bitcoin somewhere around about $33,000, give or take about 500 bucks from that number. And then if we only include the downside mean reversion plays, which obviously this one was a downside one, similar to May down and similar to December down, a little bit more in this case, about 38.12%. That actually put Bitcoin around about 35,000 bucks. And we can also look at the average days taken for this. It was about 13.75. You'll notice on this data right here, 15 definitely shows up quite a fair bit. So if you're thinking in terms of statistics, you know, likely to take about 15 days. What is 15 days? Or sorry, not 15 days. Yeah, or sorry, yes, 15 days. Yes, 15 days puts us at around early June in this case, very early June. So I do still think that statistically speaking, probabilistically speaking, Bitcoin is more likely to play out that nice bounce, you know, into like end of this month, early June. Again, doesn't mean that we can't come down short term. And of course, those areas match up very, very nicely with some major areas over here. For one, our major daily fib from the last major drop off to our current major low, we got the 382 right around 32.5. So that showed up on that chart on the projected move to the upside. And then I think, you know, best case scenario in the next month or so is probably the 0.5 here at about 35,000 bucks, which is also the gap on CME from a couple Fridays ago closure. So in that case, I think that's a good place to leave off on this analysis. Again, if you just want like the quick soundbite and you're on the higher term timeframes, daily stochastic momentum turns down below 29,350 to 29,400. That would confirm several drives of hidden bearish divergence along the way on the short term timeframes and likely have targets lower. And that would confirm, you know, that nice little fake out. Until that happens though, until that very specifically happens, or at least, you know, a 4-hour closure below about 29.5, 29.6 region, technically speaking, I should still be looking for Bitcoin to trade sideways and up, back up to the top side of the medium-term time frame range, and likely set up for that move that we just looked at over here on this chart in the coming like 2 weeks or so, I suppose. Anyways, hopefully that was helpful. And there you go for Bitcoin, sirs and zers. I forgot to shill my Instagram, but Instagram is in the link description below. Watch out for scammers. That's my only account, so please be aware. And then also Bybit shill as well. Understand that Bybit is leverage trading. It's great if you already have a strategy. It's terrible if you do not. I strongly suggest to not trade at all, whether it be leverage or spot. If you do not have some sort of a strategy that you've tested, you can do that for free on the Krown Chain application or on Excel or on a piece of pen and paper, which is actually how I used to do it. and it works. But yeah, you know, they're offering up some sort of a deposit bonus. Understand, you know, the reason why exchanges do this because they want to get you hooked, man. They want to get you hooked. It's like a crack dealer giving you a free first hit. And hey, crack can be great, but you need to pace yourself and you need to do, I don't know if you back test on crack, but look, I'm getting way offhand here. I apologize. I'll leave it right there before I say anything more stupid. And there you go. Hopefully that was helpful, sirs and zers. Take care.